Welcome to the Stable Minded Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Griffin, and along with my co-host, Gabby Greco, we thank you for tuning in for this episode. Stable Minded is brought to you in association with the Illinois American Saddlebred Pleasure Horse Association. Go to iaspha.com for more information. I was going to introduce this episode by describing our guest, Donna Pettry-Smith, as a rebel. You know, comes busting in, says what she thinks, takes no prisoners, blah, blah, blah. But the more time I spent listening to her talk, the more I realized that that description didn't quite fit. There's far more nuanced thought and experience to her approach. And so I think the word I was looking for might be innovator. Although those two may share some of the same qualities, I hope you hear in our discussion Donna's love for the people and horses that make up our community, as well as her insights into the strengths and limitations of the organizations that shape it. And don't worry, you're still going to get your share of Donna's frank talk and trademark sense of humor. So buckle up, because we're talking to Donna Pettry-Smith. I feel like maybe, Donna, you didn't have a whole lot of choice. Like, it was kind of your third generation. So how do you remember getting started?
Well, I guess I really don't remember, because I was born into, as you said, I was third generation in all of this. So I was born into a family that, I was probably on the road to horse shows as an infant. So all I ever remember for my summers or anything is going to horse shows. I know nothing different. For people that don't know, my mother was a competitive equestrian. She was a world champion many times over in multiple divisions. My grandparents were involved in Hackney ponies, and we actually had a Hackney pony breeding farm that turned more into an American saddlebred breeding farm as time went on. So we actually did both. But my earlier memories are more looking at scores of Hackney ponies running around in the field. So as opposed to saddlebreds.
Was all of that up at Royal Scott?
Yes, that was all at Royal Scott Stables. Yep.
So was that all built before you were born?
That was built before I was born. Yes. So by the time I was born, the Royal Scott Stables was up and running. The barn was running. Bonnie Byrne was our trainer back then. And we already had a string of horses and ponies that was competing. So that's my earliest memories are, I don't remember a time when we didn't have a farm.
And then do you remember how you got started showing?
There's pictures of me showing when I was probably 2 years old in lead line. I don't know that I remember that. Probably my earliest memories were showing lead line with my grandfather. I was very young, though. I probably had to have been like 3 or 4 years old, because he passed away before I was 5. But we have pictures of me showing in lead line back then, too.
And then did you begin in walk and trot?
No, there was a stables closer to where I went to school called Harmswood Stables that a lot of Chicagoland equestrians, many that went on to be American saddlebred owners and enthusiasts, many of us rode at that stable. So was my first probably formal experience taking lessons. And I started riding at Harmswood Stables with Bonnie Kittredge. So I go back with her that far. And back then we didn't have walk and trot. So we had stable shows where you had to wear like a white button down, navy jods, a tie, and we all just went around head to tail, and you weren't allowed to pass. So you just had to go whatever speed was the horse in front of you. And you were not necessarily on saddlebreds. You were on quarter horses, like whatever. You were on whatever. But, we didn't know the difference. So that inspired me to want to move forward quicker, because it wasn't very exciting. And anybody that knows my personality would know following head to tail in a white button down and navy jods wasn't really my version of excitement. But we learned the basics. And, and that's kind of how it was done back then. This is like in the 70s, this is a while ago. So, but, before the horse show, we'd all pick our horse out of a hat,
Okay.
like that was, and then you rode what you picked. So,
So then how did that lead to a show horse?
well, once I had done my time in that structure, I kind of had earned my way to having some lessons at our farm with Bonnie Byrne. And I think I was probably the first child that Bonnie had ever taught. So I was asked to step up probably more than most 8-year-olds, 7 or 8-year-olds would be stepping up. I had a show horse bought for me that probably was a little over my skill level. And we did do there was some academy type classes at the horse shows we went to locally. So I did that a little bit and then kind of quickly moved on to, the next show horse. I would say I didn't get what we would typically call a show horse until I was about, I want to say like 11 years old or so. 10 maybe. The first show horse I really remember, when we were younger, late 70s, early 80s, it was different. So your kids would have their show horse and you would show it in everything. So you would show in equitation, then you'd show in, if you have a pleasure horse, you'd show in pleasure horse. And then we had another class called bridle path, which was which was it was kind of like, I guess what park would be considered now, but you could also show 3-gated horses in it. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, no, it used to be like the performance class for my equitation horse, my trimmed equitation horse.
Yes. Okay. So, and you'd show in like everything that was offered. So, I was short and rotund. So, but I still went in equitation because that's what you did. Like it didn't matter. You learned, that was where you learned your basics and you just went, and you went in challenge cups and you went in good hands classes and you went in the championships and they were all 17 and under. Everything was 17 and under. I don't remember any 13 under. So, you were viewed like you were in high school, It's like you're a freshman. Well, you're not supposed to win. It's too bad. Maybe when you're 16, you'll be competitive. You know what I mean? That was kind of the attitude when I first started. Things started shaking out more into age groups as I got older. I was probably on the beginning end of that. So that was my beginnings.
You came up and started showing then. Did you start equitation once you started with Kim and Fran?
I started a little bit of equitation just because that's what you did, with Bonnie. And then I think Bonnie felt it would be best if the Pettry children went to a facility that actually taught children. Which understandable, totally understandable. So that's when we started riding at Crumpler stables, and they were located in Barrington, which was closer to our school. So my sister and I started riding there. I want to say I was probably, I don't know, I was 13 and under for sure. I'd say I might have been 11 probably when I started riding with Kim and Fran. And that's when I really got my first, what I would say, show horse, equitation horse. And his name was Playboy's Cabaret, and we called him Emerson. And he was bought for me when his rider, her name was Peg Paulus, she had won the medallion finals with him. And then she went off to college and he was offered for sale and they bought him for me. And I kept him for the rest of his life. So I had him for 10 or 15 years after that.
And then you came up and showed in the whole Olympics program as well, right?
Yep. Yes. That particular horse, Emerson, I started my, more formal equitation career with him. Throughout that, I always kept him. So even when I was ready to level up to another horse, When I was 13, I think I was about 13, uh, Crumplers thought I needed to level up to a trimmed equitation horse. So we bought a horse named Missy's Flying Genius, and I rode that horse for a couple years. But all the time I still kept Emerson, and he was kind of like I'd still show him in pleasure or I'd show him in another equitation class. And then after that, we bought a horse named Nosy Decision, and I showed him as well, first in trimmed, and then we grew his mane out. And as it ended up, when I was 16, I showed, I think Nosy maybe had a bad foot or something, who knows? And I ended up showing Emerson in the Olympics, and I won the gold medal actually on Emerson, which was kind of cool. So the horse I had had all along, and he was very good at patterns. So I ended up winning with him. And then I showed Nosy in the ASHA national final and won the national final with him. So that was my pleasure career. And then moved on to saddle seat the next year.
What was the path kind of it, like you kind of started some pleasure horses and then you, as well as your sister and brother, got really into the juvenile ranks and showing a lot of performance horses. When did that kind of really expand?
Well, I'd say, I mean, I was fortunate to be able to grow up in a barn and, you know, with my family being so involved in the show horse industry and things, I was lucky enough as I got older, probably 14, 15, and a little more experience and a little more talented. I had the opportunity to show some of our family's horses, maybe some horses my mom would pass down to us. And I'd say probably the first big time horse I had was a horse named Fantastic Step. That was a three-gated horse that was bought for me. My grandmother bought him for me when I think I was 16 years old. He was very neat. I ended up winning at Louisville with him. I think I was 17 years old. But around that time, I had the opportunity to show a couple of my mom's five-gated horses, and you know, we just got to show a lot of different horses out of the barn as we got older. Kristen, my sister, Kristen, for those that don't know, she's 4 years younger than me. So we never were in the same age groups together. So it worked out well. We rarely showed against each other. So sometimes my mom would pass a horse down to me, and then it would get passed down to my sister, or if it suited a division better for, maybe 13 and under, because that started around that time. Kristen would show it.
So then how was it that you came out of being a juvenile and you spent a little bit of time as an amateur, but it was pretty quick that you ended up going professional, was it? Or am I remembering that wrong?
No, no, you're pretty correct. I ended up once I left the juvenile ranks, I actually spent probably I'd say that's when I became even more active showing horses. So from the ages 18 to probably 24, I spent a lot more time showing, and I had a lot more horses. And at that time, I think my brother and sister had more horses. We just kind of started. My mom had retired from showing because she had hurt her back. So more of the horses fell to my sister and brother and I. And at that time, I felt I had a lot more opportunities to show, a lot more horses. That's when I really started getting into kind of like every division. And around that time, we even started getting into like Western horses. So I had the Palomino that everybody's familiar with and showed him a lot, Starfire Fox. But, I had more gated horses like Bazooka Joe. A lot of people remember he was a big time 5-gated pleasure horse, and Protege, who a lot of people remember me showing. But I just showed a lot more horses at that time. And around then is when Pat McConnell worked for us, for our family. So at that time, when I was 18, they had built the ranch out in Tucson, Arizona. So summers we were spent at Royal Scott in Richmond, Illinois, and then we transitioned to the West Coast for the winter time, and we would show on the West Coast. So I spent a lot more time. One year, I think I counted, I showed at like 35.
Wow.
It just became, I became kind of a full-time full-time amateur, I guess, at that time. It was a lot. But I mean, I loved it. I mean, it was great. But I mean, we showed everywhere from Florida to California. There was a few years there. We just were all over the place. It was fun.
So then where was I want to make this all be a meet cute in Minnesota.
Okay.
And is this where you meet Kenny, and do we blame Kenny for your going professional?
Yeah. Yes. How I met Kenny was my mom had bought 2 horses from Kenny. She bought for my brother, and the main horse she bought from Kenny was Callaway's Frank James, which went on to be 5-gated amateur world grand champion for my brother. But at the time, Kenny had 4 really nice gated horses, and I just knew Kenny in passing from just kind of being on the circuit and stuff. And he had, at the time, I think Champagne Special Event, which went on to be Reserve World Grand Champion gated horse for Kenny and his family. But Frank James, another horse named, I think, Well Spoken, and there was another gated horse. So my mom just went up to Kenny and just asked him which of the gated horses. She actually wanted Champagne Special Event for my brother. And she went up and asked Kenny, if he was for sale, and kind of told him what she wanted him for and wanted to keep the horse with Kenny at the time. And Kenny told her the horse that would work for Tommy in the end would be Frank James. And so she bought Frank James and another 3-gated horse named Joshua Supreme, who ended up just being a little too wild at the time for my brother, but he was adorable. But we kept Frank James with Kenny, and then that's how I kind of got to know Kenny better through that. Went up, and Tommy rode him a couple of times, and it just kind of went from there.
And then where was the point that morphed into you giving up your amateur status and going professional? And at what point then did you and Kenny move to Illinois?
Kenny and I got to know each other better the summer that my brother had Callaway's Frank James. And we had at Royal Scott, Tony Ray, who a lot of people remember, and Steve Wheeler were working for us at Royal Scott. And so at the end of 97, I had decided to move, I think about December of 97, I decided to move up to Minnesota and take a bunch of my horses up to Kenny's barn, and including some of the ones I worked. That's kind of how that started there.
Okay.
And then the more horses, as I stayed there, my mom had moved a few horses there for my sister and brother, and it just kind of took off from there. And eventually all the horses ended up in Minnesota pretty much. And I'm thinking, this is a long time ago. And what we did, Kenny was working for his family up in Minnesota. So he had Esquire Stables, which his dad and grandparents owned at the time. We were kind of working, I don't want to say for them, because I think he was leasing the barn. I believe we got married in 99 and moved back to Illinois and worked for my parents at Royal Scott Stables that year. And I ended up becoming a professional in 2000 because I had a couple of families come to me in Illinois and ask if I would instruct their children. And one was the Alden family, and it was Ashley Alden was the rider, and another family was the Gilbert family, and they had a daughter named Kristen Gilbert, and the Rising family. They had a daughter named Abby Rising. So, in order for me to instruct their children, I had to turn in my amateur card and become a professional, which I decided to do at that time and become an instructor.
And then this was all, were you back in Richmond or were you at the new
We,
farm in New Lenox?
no, we were in Richmond at that
Okay.
time.
And I'm just trying to timeline this out just a little
I
bit.
know it's a tricky timeline.
And because I don't want to be older than I am,
Oh,
because I think
okay.
1990s were like last week.
I know.
But shut up, Gabby. So, but
Exactly.
then somewhere in there, then the farm was built in New Lenox,
Yes. I believe it was 2002 when the farm was built in New Lenox.
and then you were there for a little bit, and then were up in McHenry.
Yes. So in 2000, we were working and showing out of Royal Scott Stables in Richmond, Illinois. Around that time, um, we had started looking to move more south because the barn and everything was pretty old, and we were looking at either doing a major renovation on that barn or building a new barn somewhere else, kind of where we were at. And so we started looking south because I was and still am very close to the Arnston family and Julie Roble. Her and I grew up together. So her and I had been like best friends since we were like 10 years old. So I was familiar with the New Lenox Mokina area, um, just from being friends with Julie because they were down in this area. And I'd come visit them all the time. So I knew this area best. Um, so I believe we bought property and started building maybe 2001, 2002, and we were definitely moved in here in 2002. We were here through all of the gals, the young ladies that I was instructing, all that I stayed through all of them going to college. And then
And winning a ton of world and national
I
champions.
was very fortunate because the riders I had were very dedicated, very talented, which helped me make my decision when I made it to change and be professional. And I believe in 2007, we got a call from Martina Obanoff, and they were looking for a new situation for Maya to do some lessons. And so she started riding with us here in New Lenox in 2007. And at the end of 2007 was when we met with Obanoffs, and they proposed that we would come work for them. And so we moved up to McHenry to work um, at Obanoff Stables in 2000 and maybe the end of 2008. But we were there, or maybe I have the timeline off. I think we worked for them 2008 and 2009, and then we moved back to New Lenox in 2010, early 2010, and opened Skyline Stables.
And at that time, then you had Maya and Barbara. Then that was kind
Yep.
of the beginning of your relationship with them.
Yes, when we were up at Dick and Martinez, uh, Maya Maya actually she had been riding with us the whole at least summer of 2007, and she had like stayed with us in our house and stuff. So we knew Maya very well. And when we worked for Obanos, we got to know Barbara a lot better. So by the time we transitioned to come back to New Lenox and open Skyline Stables, we had a pretty strong relationship with Maya, and we were getting to know Barbara better. And I'd say when we moved back here, then it started, a stronger bond with all of us. I think we're at 18 years. Yeah. Yeah. When I worked that out in my head, I was like, there is no way.
Yeah, I don't. Again, shut up,
Yeah.
Gabby.
I know. It's insane. I,
This is
yeah,
when they always pipe
it's
up and
insane.
go, I wasn't even born then.
No, I was born. I remember I used to watch Maya's show, and I was just always like, because I think we're the same age, I believe. Or she,
Yeah.
I think so. I always remember watching her show, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's just so, like, watching her show was amazing. And I always told Giovanna, I was like, watch Maya's show because she knows how to work a ring and how to show off her horse. And it was really cool. So I loved watching Maya's show.
We will get right back to our show. But before we do, I want to clear something up. You don't have to be from Illinois to be a member of the Illinois American Saddlebred Pleasure Horse Association. You don't have to own or show an American Saddlebred Pleasure Horse. Heck, you don't even need to ride. What we do need is for you to enjoy and believe in all the ways that IASPA is sharing and bettering your horse experiences, including this podcast. And if you do, consider going to iaspha.com and becoming a member. And if you're already a member, consider becoming a sponsor or maybe a media partner. We are so excited for the future that you're helping us create for our horse community. And like we say, we do all of this for our members, but we can't do it without them. And now, back to our show. So, this will be I need to learn how to transition all of this better.
That's edit.
That is edit.
See, that's the beauty of this.
But what I would really love is to be like all those guys that know how to do it better and somehow swing this from Skyline to Monarch. And you know what? In my defense, that was a pretty left turn, I feel like, for you. That I'm guessing some of it, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but some of it came out of your involvement with IASPA. But really, what led to you first coming up with the idea for Monarch and then taking that idea and bringing it to reality?
Well, I would have to backtrack a little bit. I was fortunate enough at an earlier age, so in my earlier 20s, I would say, to be invited to be a board member at IASPA. And this is back in the days when I believe Mike Arnston was the president of IASPA at that time. And they were looking for new, younger people to carry the torch, essentially. So I was invited to be on the board of directors, and I want to say I might have been 25 at the oldest, and I've been on that board ever since. So, we're looking at 25 plus years. I've been on the IASPA board, and I've served in different capacities, but I believe that piece of the puzzle was the most important because that opened doors for me and taught me how to be on a board and at an organization and what that entails, what's expected, if you're going to be a good contributor and board member. And then that led to me being more involved at UPHA, I would say. And again, I was lucky enough. At the time, Kim Crumpler was the chair of the equitation committee. And now we're going back to maybe 2008 or 7. And he invited me to be on the UPHA equitation committee, which was my first UPHA national committee I'd ever been on. And I served on that committee for, I think, 10 or 12 years. But being on that committee then opened doors to being, on the ASHA board of directors, which opened doors to me being, at USCF on multiple committees in the National Breeds and Discipline Committee. So it kind of all of those opportunities piggybacked on the other one. And then I think the knowledge and experience that I had from being on all of those various committees and boards led me to, kind of start thinking up new and inventive ways to serve the industry and move it forward.
And before we talk about Monarch more, but how influential was your dad? I know he was very involved at ASHA.
Yes.
And how much did that play into your wanting to be a part or knowing that you needed to do something to give back?
I think what's interesting is that I look back on the years, I believe he was president of the American Saddlebred Association for 3 or 4 years. And I look back on those years and he kind of kept us out of it, kind of kept the barn out of it. I know he was traveling a ton, and I went to a few events with him. And so I did know that he was very involved, very influential. I have to say, the biggest thing that I learned from him and watching him is he was very serious about his position, and he was very dedicated, and he was very fair, and he truly wanted to do what was best to grow the industry and to serve the industry, which I think was very impressive to me. And I also, by him being an example, and then as I moved forward and served in these different capacities, and especially when I went to serve on the ASHA board, he was extremely helpful because he stressed how serious it was to be on a board like that and how much influence you can have and what you affect by, either being educated or uneducated in a position like that.
And so was Monarch a culmination of those experiences and what you saw that we needed? And maybe this is, I don't know how to ask this except for why is it that you felt that you were the one who had to start that show? Not only that you were the one who had to, and then you were the one who did.
Well, I think I'm a thinker that I always think we can do better. So I'm always trying to think of something we're not doing that we should be doing, or think of outside the box, because I'm very much a person. I don't like just doing things because that's how we've always done them. Because I always feel like that's how if you're not moving forward, you are moving backwards, in my opinion. That's just how I feel about things. So, um, Monarch kind of, to be honest with you, began in my mind when I was the president of ASHA and maybe a little bit before that. And I was thinking of it as an idea to be like an ASHA national championship type horse show. What that would look like, what the feel should be, what the thought should be. I thought we should be like inclusive. I thought it would be bringing maybe some new divisions to the forefront, kind of the test kitchen that Monarch became. So that was something I was kicking around in my head as an idea for ASHA. And then at the same time, I was kind of kicking around in my head an idea for Equine Sports Council, and it wasn't called Equine Sports Council, just a governance type situation. And I thought maybe that could be a fit for UPHA. And at the time, I thought like, well, maybe if you had like a governance situation going on for UPHA and maybe this other show going on for ASHA, the two of them could work together, and that would be a way to bring everyone in. And as I kept going, both sides weren't interested in my ideas. So I thought, okay, which is fine. They had other things that they wanted to do. And so, I still felt kind of strongly about the horse show idea. And I actually about both ideas, obviously, but the horse show idea, I just really felt we could do better and we could make kind of this fun, cool show highlighting different divisions and make up new things and, create a show where everyone felt included and respected and appreciated for being there, and just, I just felt we could give a feeling like we're celebrating horses of all breeds and all levels, for the magic they bring to our lives. And I think I'm hoping we're doing that at Monarch. And I just hope we keep building on that because I think that's what people love about horses and the horse community is kind of that magic that you don't get in everyday life, that you get when you walk into a barn or when you're at a horse show or, it's something intangible that those of us that are involved with horses, I think we're always chasing that feeling when we're not with the horses.
And I really didn't think about this before, but which came first, Monarch or Single Bit? And did one lead to the other?
Yes, that definitely the idea for Monarch, even if it wasn't called Monarch, the idea was way before the idea for Single Bit. Because like I said, that was in my head during my time at ASHA, like something along those lines. Single Bit came about because we were looking for, once we kind of came up with the Monarch, more the concept, and we were a little bit more moving forward with it. We were looking for that different piece to the puzzle to introduce through Monarch.
It was very unique
Single Bit.
to Monarch at that time, wasn't it? I mean, that was
Yes. Yep.
kind of the introduction of the division.
Yes. And that's what we were looking for. We were looking for like a unique division we could kind of introduce through Monarch, and so Single Bit became that. And that kind of just came about, to be honest, Kenny and I were talking about it, and I think we were sitting in the kitchen, and I'm like, every trainer always says, yeah, I wish we could, if we could only show this horse in a snaffle. So good in a snaffle. If we could only just show it in a snaffle. And I'm like, why can't we? Why can't we show it in a snaffle? And Kenny's like, well, I don't know. I mean, that's just not what ever is done. They're not ready. And I'm like, but some horses are ready in a snaffle. Sometimes it's the rider that's not ready. And so we kind of started batting around ideas and came to the conclusion that, like, yeah, why not? Why don't we try it? And, I am always about trying something. And if it fails, and that's fine. And that just informs your next creative idea. Failure's fine. Fail often. I fail often. And, I do. Because, if you're having ideas, they're going to fail. So then you use the failed ideas to inform your new idea. And then maybe that makes it better. But Single Bit, once people got over it, at first it was like tough Single Bit, bleh. But once people kind of understood it, then they started to use it. It was like, oh, wait a minute, there's something here to this. And it gave horses jobs back. It gave riders that maybe wouldn't be showing their horses. It gave them a show season back. And now it's, I kind of liked watching where it went because when we started it, I didn't really have a clear picture of what we would all use it for. And I like where it's landed. I like it.
So you didn't have you weren't in your head picturing where this was going to end up, that it has morphed into this division. I mean, up at the IASFA shows, it is typically one of the largest divisions at the horse show.
Is it not just at IASPA though?
No, it is spread. Is it that big? And it's spread outside of.
Yeah. Yep. At all the shows.
Did you see that? I mean, was that something you were kind of picturing, the kind of success and the reach that it was going to have? I mean, now it's gone as far as now they're using it at some of the Morgan horse shows as well.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't really know what it would be used for. I knew it would be useful. Honestly, I thought how it would be used is that trainers would take their academy horses and put their advanced academy riders on those horses in suits as like the next step out of academy. But what I see it's being used for now is more so the their pleasure horses with riders that perhaps are not ready to be in a full bridle, or perhaps that horse does not like a full bridle, which there's a lot of those. And so they've turned into good pleasure classes with snaffles on, but you watch them and those riders now have stepped up and they're more confident in their and stuff. And I just can see through a trainer's lens that if those horses were in full bridles with those riders, those classes would not be nearly as competitive looking and as fast paced and as exciting as they are, which I think is really cool because I think the riders are having a great time. So I actually really like where it's headed. I think the classes are I enjoy watching them. There's like I think at Oshkosh there was like 17 in the class and it was like a really good fast-paced class, competitive.
This stable-minded episode is brought to you in part through the support of Sold by Sunday. Are you looking to buy, sell, or promote in the show horse world? Sold by Sunday is your one-stop digital destination for weekly online auctions featuring show horses, equine embryos, stud services, tack, buggies, trailers, and even equine art and collectibles. Or use Show Horse Blast to promote your horse's achievement through their powerful email and social media exposure. Whether you're selling, shopping, or celebrating, Sold by Sunday has got you covered. Go to showhorsesales.biz or search Sold by Sunday to get started today. In what general direction are you hoping to see Monarch head in the future? Is it like it feels like it started in one place, well, and Single Bit for that matter too. They started in one place and have already grown into this new thing. What do you hope to see for Monarch in the future?
You know, I'm not trying to define it in my mind so much as I'm trying to kind of sit back and watch it. And I want to watch how the trainers use it, how the participants use it. And I kind of want to just be fluid in how we continue to build it based on what I see trending at the horse show. So, I mean, most people know when we started Monarch, we didn't even have academy because I didn't want to step on toes or anything, and I just wasn't quite sure if that was a fit. And then a lot of the instructors came to me and they're like, "We've got to have academy because to bring people to Single Bit, we have to have academy to have them see the Single Bit, to have them see, you know, here's the path." And the instructors made an awesome case for that. So I'm like, "Okay, then that's what we'll do. If that's what you guys need, that's what we're going to do." And of course, when I added academy, I thought it was going to be in the covered arena. So I thought that's maybe what the instructors wanted. And then they all came to me and they're like, "No, no, no, we want to be in the Coliseum with the organ, with the music, and I'm like, "Are you sure? Is that okay? I mean, is everybody going to be okay?" And all the instructors are like, "Yeah, it's going to be great." So I'm like, "Okay, great. I want to do what the trainers and instructors want me to do. I want to follow those trends. I don't want to impose my vision on the trainers and instructors. I want them to tell me what they think we need to grow because I don't think I'm so smart as to know exactly what we need to grow. But I am 100% willing to provide the vessel for the trainers and instructors to use to grow the industry, and I'm 100% behind it. So I'm just going to follow the trends. And right now we're seeing a big trend, obviously Single Bit, but seeing a big trend with, academy is huge. So we're going to follow that trend and we'll keep going in that direction. And the show's doing good. I think we've quadrupled since we started. And yeah, so I just want to keep following what's suggested to me to grow.
So, kind of backing up on this a little bit and looking maybe a little bit more big picture, what kind of advice would you give to somebody? I don't know how, I guess I said it before, but I want to ask, like, who the hell were you to start a horse show? And not only started, like, all of the stuff that it took, and whether somebody's thinking about starting a horse show or they just have another idea. I hear thousands of ideas in this industry. This spring on social media, I couldn't open it up each day without reading 100 ideas about what should be done and where should we go and how we should go about it. But what would you tell somebody or in trying to take that idea and, I guess, what it takes to bring one of them to fruition and the time and the effort? Like, I've looked at this, like, you have enough work to do. You've got a barn to keep going and clients to take to horse shows. The last thing that you needed was to put something more on your plate and put a horse show together. And so I guess I'm asking, why did you do it? And how did you do it? And how would you suggest that somebody who's got an idea go about bringing it to reality?
Well, first of all, I do have a lot of audacity. So let's just start there. And secondly, it's not the first time somebody's asked, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, let's just start there. Doesn't hurt my feelings. It's not the first time. You know what, to be honest with you, Monarch and Equine Sports Council, my involvement in that was the fruition of both of them were born out of my frustration of being on boards of directors that talked a lot and didn't do anything. And I think after you're involved in something like that and you're trying to move forward and then you just keep hitting roadblocks in group settings, I finally was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I don't need anybody's approval. I don't need anybody's permission. I'm going to do it. And I actually was talking to a friend of mine about it. And when we were thinking of the concept of this and I was kind of pitching it to him, I literally said, the only problem is I don't think they're going to let me do it. And he said, what do you mean they're not going to let you do it? Who's not going to let you do it? And I said, well, I don't know. I just think these organizations, they're just not going to let me do it. And he said, well, are you paying for the Illinois State Fairgrounds? And I said, yeah. And he goes, are you paying all your employees to do this? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, if you're funding all of this, you could have the intergalactic world championships and nobody could tell you you're not allowed to have it. I said, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I go, right? So, I guess I just thought it needed to happen. So at some point, and I think anybody that's been on a board or a committee or something, what's the saying, like, a committee is where ideas go to die, or whatever. Because usually it's not going to shock anybody that I'm talking like this, but, sometimes, and there's reasons why, but you start getting involved in committees and boards and stuff, and there becomes a lot of red tape, and we all start to talk ourselves out of good ideas because there's always a million reasons why something's not going to work. Sometimes an individual, though, if they're willing to fail, which I was willing to fail, and it wasn't going to reflect on anybody except me, and that was okay. So I think that's honestly what helped move things forward, is that as an organization, sometimes you can't get things done because the organization doesn't want to look like they failed at something. An individual or a small group that wants to move forward and do something, if that group's okay with failing and then picking up and carrying on, it makes it easier. Even at IASPA, it's a small enough group that I feel like we're willing to try an idea and we're okay if we fail. And so it gives you the freedom to explore that idea and try to bring it to fruition and then change course sometimes to make it a little different than you thought. But I just think that sometimes innovation comes faster from a small group or from individuals because of that very reason, the failure aspect.
Is there something about the way that you are defining or reframing failure that allows you to not only take these things on and not have a fear of it, and then also to, as you're going, correct course in light of whatever you would call, quote unquote, a failure?
Yes, I'm throwing the word failure around heavily, but that you are correct. I'm speaking more of a course correction sometimes. Sometimes there is an idea that just doesn't work, but you got to try it, to know that it doesn't work. I've been shocked by some of the things that did work that I thought there's no way. Like pony doodle relay to me, I'm like, yeah, we'll maybe get a couple of kids. Like that might be fun for some people. We had 40 kids like storming in on pony noodle doodles. I had no clue, like it would be that popular. And everybody was so bummed that I didn't have it this year. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. Course correction, we will be having the doodle relay next year. I learned. But yeah, no, I think it's ideas. Like I said, I would never call something a true failure because if it doesn't work, it's a data point, like you said, and you learned. And then you kind of dissect it and you're like, why didn't that work? What am I? Because we're always going to put our personal perspective on something, um, and go at something from a personal perspective and what we know. And I do that a lot. And then I get surprised because I didn't realize there was a whole nother component to something, perhaps. But yeah, failure, I'm using that term too heavily, but I guess I call it failure only because that's a familiar
No,
term.
and I'm saying that I think that a lot of things don't happen because somebody is afraid to even fail in the way that you're defining it. Like they're afraid of we're not going to call it failure. They're afraid of the setback, or they're afraid of it just not working the way they wanted it to.
Yeah.
And it seems like you don't take that as a stop or a stop sign. It's just a point at which you course correct.
Yes, I would definitely say that. And I think probably growing up in this industry and then going through kind of the experience that I had with the boards I was on, committees I was on, and things, seeing how oftentimes people are handcuffed and by themselves, oftentimes because they're so afraid to present, what is a good idea, or they'll tell me about it away from the committee call or something. And they were afraid to discuss it or bring it up because they were nervous that people would, judge the idea, not like the idea. I think that's I think that's a difficult thing because I think sometimes we're more critical of ourselves than other people would be of us. So I think that worries people as far as presenting new ideas. For me, I've had to learn. I didn't know this before, or I didn't feel this way before, but I've had to learn that um, I don't care what anybody thinks of me, frankly, anymore. And I really don't. I really don't. I used to. I used to care. I was telling somebody a story that when I became president of, and we might cut this because it might be too much, but it might also be funny. I was telling somebody that when I became president of ASHA, I so wanted to like fit in and I wanted to be accepted and I want people to think I was serious, but I really wanted to be accepted by the board. Okay. So I went out and I bought a Porsche, right? Okay. And the first thing I did, I pulled into the parking lot and Scott Hagan pulled in next to me with like a $400,000 car. And everybody's like, oh, Scott, oh my God, your car. And I'm like, yeah, there we go. That's about right. So I learned that really fast. I'm like, yeah, you're really going to fit in. That's great. You did really good with that. So now I drive a car that looks like a pickle, which is so much better. I fit in better in the pickle. It's much more my personality than my fancy car that used to leak oil all over my garage floor. But we all go through that. And then at some point you're like, I mean, you have to give up caring what other people are going to think. If you're going to have big ideas, you just have to kind of go for it, I think.
I was going to
Does
say,
that make sense?
yeah, I think people get so stuck in like what they're doing, and it's easy, right? Every day to do the same thing. I mean, especially for us, like horses, okay, they're going to jog this day, they're going to ride this
Yeah.
day. It's a formula. But I think people get a lot of stuck in that rut, and they are not looking to the future of the industry, which when Sarah and I talk to you, you're always thinking, what's coming up next? Okay, what can we do to improve the business? Like you said, and I think just a lot of people don't, I don't know, like I said, it's easy to get stuck in the rut. Okay, what I'm doing is great. I'm winning all these classes. I'm buying all these fancy horses. I'm whatever. But you got to think of, okay, what's next? What's coming up next? How do we grow? How do we get more kids into lessons or people into showing? And I think you've done that with the Single Bit and Monarch, all that good stuff.
No, I agree. I think we get in the daily routine. And it's exactly like you said, like the way the barns work and our jobs work, it's very routine.
Mhm.
It's very like XYZ with the horses. Then we go to XYZ horse shows.
Yep.
We show in XYZ classes.
Yep.
This is how we do it. And I mean, that's all great. But I think we're hitting a point where we're at in this industry that we're competing with some things that we never anticipated we were going to be competing with, and a lot of that's, technology. Pretty soon we're going to be competing with AI and all
We
those
already
things.
are.
We already are. Yeah, we already are. I'm just pretending we're not. But we have to keep evolving, think, because people always talk about being worried because there isn't enough young trainers. The feeling is there are not enough young trainers coming up, to service the industry if we're to grow it. But what I say to that is that we need to build an industry that's welcoming and that gives hope to young trainers. Because if young people look at this industry and they don't see any innovation or anything new or anything that we're doing to change the course we're on, I wouldn't have any hope to open up a business or to do this either. We have to start thinking outside the box and, growing from there.
This episode is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Monarch Show Series National Championship. It's their efforts to build a stronger, better, and more inclusive horse show industry that makes projects like this podcast possible. Make sure to join us every September at the historic Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield, Illinois. For more information, go to monarchshowseries.com. Just to kind of bring this around, what would you say to somebody that's got a great idea? How do they bring that to reality?
What I'm trying to do currently, and I hope that this helps with what you're talking about, I hope that I'm a person that's helping to bring about a culture in which we welcome new ideas and we welcome new people to the table and we welcome younger people to the table with fresh perspectives on how things should start forming to change our industry. So, to the people that have ideas and feel like they maybe don't have an outlet for them or a person to listen to them, I am somebody that's willing to listen to new ideas. And there's other people in this industry that are willing to listen to new ideas. I think those ideas are best served in a smaller environment, to a show committee, to a local club. I think a lot of great ideas, get presented to larger boards, national board. I just feel that the local community is where to go with big ideas. In my experience, the national organizations, those are difficult places to bring fresh ideas to, only because it's different. It's difficult with the amount of people that ideas have to go through, the timeline that ideas have to go through, the red tape ideas have to go through, the vetting process. There's a lot, and it's just the way of how a national organization is. Creativity kind of goes there to die because there's too many hoops to jump through, and it's understandable because when you're talking a national organization, they have a certain image they have to uphold and a lot of people they have to answer to. When you're going local, you have smaller groups, and those smaller groups are usually looking for an idea to get behind and to be a little more creative in what they're doing to promote a horse show or to promote a clinic or to do something new. I just think a lot of great ideas start with a smaller group and a more local group. That would be my advice to somebody that thinks they have a great idea. Find your local group. Find a leader that's local and try and grow it from the ground up. And then, you know what? Once it's kind of proven at a local level or at a smaller level, larger organizations maybe will pick that up, once they see that it's proven. So you've already kind of run the test on it. Then a larger organization is going to have the confidence, and the data to support that this idea could move forward. And then you could probably get better funding for it too. And, a bigger venue for it if that's what you are looking for.
And now the final 5. Our favorite 5 questions we ask all our favorite stable-minded people. So before we let you go, I'm going to hit you with the final 5. So if you were not in show horses, what would you be doing?
I think I'd have a hair salon or a pet rescue. Those would be my top 2 picks.
We've talked too long, but you got to say more.
More than that?
Yeah, why would
politics?
No, not more things. Why would we have a hair salon or a pet rescue? And then I'm also picturing a hair salon with a pet rescue in it.
Ooh, that would be cool. I'd like
that's a good idea.
That is a good idea. That's a really good idea. Hair salon, I can see myself doing running something like that. Pet rescue, I have a soft spot for the older animals and I'm all about like the land of misfit toys. So that's my jam. So pet rescue, it's perfect for me.
And to some degree, we all have a horse addiction. What do you think is at the root of yours?
Well, I'd have to say at the root of mine is my family. It's how I grew up. So I don't know anything different.
Big picture, what is the greatest gift your involvement in horses has given you?
Big picture, I think, has been the gift of I've had a big, full life. I've traveled a lot, and I have met a lot of great people and lifelong friends, very eclectic individuals that you don't always meet in everyday life. And I love that.
What is the biggest risk you've taken and how did it pay off?
I would say the biggest risk I've taken was it would either be when I moved up to Minnesota in 2007. Or no, it was 97. Oh my God. When I moved up to Minnesota in 1997 or, oh my goodness, or opening Skyline Stables in 2010. Those would be my 2 biggest risks, I'd say.
And how
Opening
did they?
Skyline Stables.
And I think it's a little obvious, but how did they pay off?
They've both paid off well. How did they pay off? I will tell you that and this would be not what people would expect me to say. Opening Skyline Stables has paid off in the respect that it has allowed me the freedom to do things like come up and facilitate ideas such as Monarch and work on those projects. So I appreciate, and that's not what people would probably expect me to say, but the fact that it's given me the freedom to pursue my creative interests in this industry has been a major gift.
And lastly, what is something that you're currently excited about?
Something I'm currently excited about. I'm very excited about Equine Sports Council, and I would like to put more committees in place, put more projects in place, put more I just want a little bit. I'm ready for more things to get cooking with Equine Sports Council. I'm enjoying that, and I enjoy the partnership with Monarch, with Equine Sports Council. So working on both of those, I'm very excited.
Well, thank you very much for taking this time to do this. We took up a lot of your time, but we
No,
really
that's all
appreciate
right.
you taking the time to talk to us and talk to you about taking on these kind of projects. And I guess what I'm hoping kind of comes out of this is that maybe somebody who has an idea for something will find the courage to do it and maybe sees a route to make that happen. So I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about that.
Yes, it was fun. I hope I wasn't too negative.
No.
I was trying to choose my words carefully.
I want to send a huge thank you to Donna, not only for sitting down with us today, but for what she's doing to ensure and grow the future of our show horse community, and for encouraging others who want to do the same. Now put down your phone, and pick up the reins, and go make a difference. We'll see you back here next time.